Let's raise the big question then. Has history, or is history being made, or is this a big blunder? Will the cheetahs be able to survive in Kuno? Will cheetahs adapt to a new home? That's the big questions that are being raised across the wildlife world. I can tell you, joining me now, Divya Bhanush Singh, member Cheetah Task Force and someone who was a driving force behind this project. Dr. Mahesh Rangarajan, environmental historian at Ashoka University and someone who's the country's leading environmental historian. Appreciate both of you joining us. I'm also going to first though go to Valmik Thapar, naturalist and conservationist, who I spoke to earlier, because Valmik is one of the few opposed to this whole project. Valmik Thapar, you seem to be the biggest critic of this project to bring the African cheetah to India. What is it about this project that you're so strongly objecting to the mission of translocation? Remember, Valmik is writing a book on the cheetahs of East Serengeti, and he's done more than 40 books, an author, member of various wildlife task force, Project Tiger, among others. Valmik Thapar, why are you objecting so strongly to the mission of the translocation of the cheetah?
I'm not objecting to the translocation of any animal. If we want to bring African animals to India, we are very welcome to it. We have never had African cheetahs in India's history. In the last 300 years, there is no natural record of a cheetah family in the wild. So why are we suddenly bringing an exotic species to India? Tomorrow, Odisha can ask for African lions. Somebody else will ask for a zebra, another person for a giraffe. We are opening a can of worms, and there is no logic. I have not understood why the union government has been advised in this manner. It's wrong advice. Why do we need to get African cheetahs to Kuno Palpur? That's my question to anyone who wants to answer it.
But what is your biggest fear, Valmik Thapar? Is it about the cheetah's survival here? Where do you fear? What could go wrong, given that so much of effort has gone into planning this project over a decade now?
If you take Kuno Palpur as an area, it's an area which is a home for the Indian leopard, the occasional tiger, and lots of hyenas. All these three, leopards, tigers and hyenas, are enemies of cheetahs. If you prepare this landscape, 6,400 square kilometers, resettle the villages, what is going to happen? The leopard population will climb to 400 leopards. The hyenas will be in their hundreds, and both these animals will tear apart any cheetahs that you introduce. And you're planning 35 to 50 cheetahs in the next 5 to 10 years. The cheetah has no hope in this. It's impossible, the equation. Also, African cheetahs live on Thompson's gazelles. They live on small antelope in Africa. We have not prepared or rehabilitated black buck herds. We have not rehabilitated Indian chinkara or four-horned antelopes. So what are the cheetahs going to run after? I don't suppose it's going to be spotted deer and sambar deer in the forest. So we have an area with lots of problems by introducing an exotic species. Our indigenous species will suffer tremendously at the cost of introducing an exotic species. So I am very, very wary of it. But if this is what our wildlife scientists and advisors to the government have persuaded the government to do, then we will all watch it. It will be the challenge of a lifetime, because forest officers will be spending 24 hours chasing these animals to ensure their survival. And there's a big question mark to their survival, because I have looked at these cheetahs every year in the eastern Serengeti.
You know, the experts though behind the project say that the leopards have been removed. The cheetahs are being brought into the area as prey for cheetahs. You seem to be suggesting that all these efforts won't work, that this is not sustainable. Am I correct that you, even before your first reaction is it's not sustainable?
It's not true. The leopards jumped into the cheetahs' small enclosures where cheetahs will be housed before they are released. Those leopards have been moved out. There will be at least 60 to 70 leopards in the wild of Kuno Palpur, and they will be interacting with cheetahs. This is not the correct way to look at this. When finally the cheetah is released into the forests, they will have to deal with their number one enemy, which are leopards. And just like you want cheetah population to go up, so will the leopard population go up. And what are they all going to feed on? Where is the breeding farms for the prey? Are you going to import Thompson's gazelle? Are you going to import Grant's gazelle? What are you going to do with the food for these cheetahs?
But, this has been a mission long in the making, conceived when the UPA 1 was in power. Jairam Ramesh was Environment Minister, went to South Africa, I think 2009, and supported now by the Modi government, by wildlife experts across the world. Surely all of them can't be wrong?
My opinion, as a wildlifer who spent 47 years working with big cats, I am saying that this mission to bring cheetahs has no logic, should not have been undertaken. If people want to take on this challenge, they are very welcome. I have no great objection, but it makes no sense to me at all. Both the governments have been advised by different people. The first decision of the government, which was the Congress government, was not to bring cheetahs. Then Shri Jairam Ramesh changed that and supported bringing in cheetahs. That's his problem. He has to understand wildlife much more than he does. My understanding of wildlife, and as a friend of wildlife, this is not in the interest of Indian wildlife or in the interest of African cheetahs. That's my opinion.
Is there an alternative plan, though, that you would have suggested? Any other plan that could have brought the cheetah here, which went extinct in 1950s? I know you're saying that that the cheetah in its present form is not indigenous, but do you have a better plan?
I have no alternatives for the cheetahs. If we had any cheetahs in the past and all the promoters of this plan said that there were Asiatic cheetahs, there are only 15 to 20 Asiatic cheetahs left in the world in Iran, and they can never come here. So I do not want to set a precedence in this country. I am not in favor of that, to bring African cheetahs here, because tomorrow there will be a demand from different state governments of bringing other African animals. And why should we not look after our animals first? We have snow leopards, we have endangered species of birds, we have smaller mammals. They all require money and care. We do not require multi-million-dollar projects which have no sense, they have no logic, because we never had African cheetahs in this country.
A concern, of course, is the conflict with humans. Would you cite that to justify your stand that we do have villages coexisting in such reserves, unlike in the Serengeti, where you have miles and miles of savanna with no human habitation?
It will be a big concern, because in the larger landscape of 6,400 square kilometers, there are nearly 150 villages, and human beings will have to be resettled. The livestock population will be under threat. There will have to be a huge amount of effort to reduce and minimize the man-animal conflict. And we are adding another huge problem to our forest department, which is already overstretched and dealing with multitudes of problems.
Would you, though, support translocating, let's say, the Asiatic lions from Gir to Kuno, which was the original plan, move them, because there are lots of them in Sasan Gir in Gujarat, move them to Madhya Pradesh, that was shelved due to strong opposition from the Gujarat government? Would you have supported that?
Yes, I support a small population of Asiatic lions in Kuno Palpur, because the second population of lions is important so that no disease can wipe out the first population. Also, lions in Kuno Palpur will not be attacked by leopards or hyenas, whereas cheetahs will be attacked by leopards and hyenas. So they are two different things. It's how you look at big cats. I do not know how governments have rationalized a home that was meant for the Asiatic lion to suddenly become the home of the African cheetah. Please, someone explain to me, because in my brain, I do not understand it.
Those are very, very strong
And don't forget village dogs. We have to get rid of all the village dogs, because village dogs as a pack can tear the cheetah apart.
My final question, what you seem to be suggesting, conserve animals first that India is home to, don't bring species from other parts of the world. Am I correct?
My view is that we should look after our indigenous species, and when we have to restock them, we must find a way to do that with our indigenous species. We do not need to introduce African cheetahs, and all the promoters of the present plan have never advocated African cheetahs. They're now saying there is no difference between the African cheetah and the Asiatic cheetah because the DNA is very close. But they never said this before. So we are great at making rationales, misadvising governments to doing things which are highly complex. This is a highly complex project to undertake, considering all the problems we already face in the field.
Okay, so you've heard the criticism there from Valmik Thapar, who I spoke to earlier. Let's get in the voices of those who believe this project is a positive step forward. Divya, Baru Singh, as a member of the Cheetah Task Force, listening to Valmik Thapar address all his concerns, that this is not the way to translocate an animal like the cheetah into Kuno, which he believes is a space where the cheetah will compete with leopards, possibly with tigers from neighboring Ranthambore. It isn't the best space to be in.
All right, Rajdeep, thank you very much. Before I come to Valmik Thapar, two ways. There is an echo
Go ahead.
in my sound. Okay. First, a small correction. The last reports of cheetahs in India was in 1967 from the same location where the 3 cheetahs were shot. And there was one from Hazaribagh even later. And if you look at the Indian subcontinent, the last reports of cheetahs in the Indian subcontinent were from the Chagi Plains in Balochistan in 1997, where one was shot, 1 cheetah and 2 cubs were sighted, and 1 cheetah skin came for sale in Islamabad. Having said that, I'll come to Valmik. The issue is this, that the difference between African and Indian or Asiatic cheetahs is very, very minor, as the DNA tells you today. One. Point number 2, cheetahs in Africa, wherever they are used to living with leopards and hyenas. One specific point, hyenas, the spotted hyenas in Africa are in packs, whereas the striped hyena is not in packs in India. Of course there are leopards. Of course there is a possibility of some kind of a interaction between leopards and cheetahs. But then that's what they face back home. Coming back to calling them African cheetahs, I really don't know. You see, between 1918 and 1947 or 50, 200 cheetahs were imported from Africa. They came after a 15 days journey without tranquilizers, without antibiotics. And they were treated by our Indian people as if they were Indian cheetahs. And they were treated when they fell ill with Indian medicines, not Western medicines. And so what are we talking about African cheetahs? There is no such specific, I mean, there is the distinction between African cheetahs and Asian cheetahs is so minimal that we are not bringing an animal which is entirely different. Valmik talks of bringing in zebras and God knows what else. But zebras never existed in India. Cheetahs did. And they, my God, they did until 1997 in the Indian subcontinent. I see no problem whatsoever. Look, if we do not take a risk, you cannot progress. If the Americans hadn't decided to go to the moon, we would have never gone to it, and we lost astronauts. So what? Let's go ahead with it. Also, it's not a zero-sum game that if cheetahs come, then all other Indian animals are not going to be protected. That's ridiculous. Also,
but what's the big benefit? What's the big positive?
Is the cause of protection. I'll tell you, the big benefit is this. I'll tell you. The big benefit is that if a mega animal which becomes a flagship animal, you are going to be able to protect a hell of a lot of grasslands, scrub jungles, which the government has so far, since last 70 years, paid very scant attention to. Our entire effort has been forest related. Kuno Palpur is a forest, of course. But do you know, Rajdeep, that as late as 1920, the Shikar Khana in charge of Gwalior state said that there are 50 cheetahs in this area. So what are we talking about? Let's look at history properly. Let's do our homework before we make this kind of statements. You know, I'm sorry. I'm terribly sorry that this kind of a strident attitude is displaying itself here.
I'm trying to get in as many views. Mahesh Rangarajan, you are a historian. As Divya Bhanu Singh ji mentioned, the cheetah, according to him, clearly existed for several decades in India, and there is very little difference between an African and an Indian cheetah. But have cheetahs been reintroduced in any other part of the world, or are we seeing something unique? And therefore, there is a sense that will this go right or wrong, Mahesh?
So there have been since 65 to 67 reintroductions in Southern Africa. Most of these are in South Africa. 5 are in neighboring countries such as Malawi and Zambia. I do want to emphasize I have the greatest respect for Mr. Thapar, both as scholar and as someone who's done so much for the tiger and other fauna. I would, however, submit that the historical record in the cheetah in the colonial period is very clear. Besides hunting records, animals were killed for bounties, and there are very clear evidence of cheetah being killed as far south as Tirunelveli, which by the way is the southern range of the black buck, major prey animal in open areas. And very important, there are records also in Satyamangalam forest, Coimbatore. And the cheetah habitats in India in the late 19th century, as written by people like Baldwin, consisted of 3 kinds of areas. The open tree-dotted savanna with blackbuck, ravines and broken country, as well as scrub jungle. So, you know, we must remember in late 19th century, density of population in India was 80 to a square kilometer. In 1600, it was 35. It's a very different landscape. And any conservation will be a challenge. Today, most of the country is cultivated. The forest and uncultivated area is smaller. The prey base is smaller. But there is very little doubt that the cheetah had a very important presence in the subcontinent. And this hunting was very significant, but so was the role of administration. They were very happy that they were eliminating the cheetah because the British wanted to kill off almost all carnivores. Some princes also played a role by trapping cheetahs and using them in captivity for hunting.
You know, there will be those, though, Divya Bhanu Singh, who will say that this is a distraction from what was the original plan. The original plan was to have a second home for the Gir lion, that moved the Gir lion from Sasan Gir to, in a way, to another state, have another habitat. Now in Kuno, you have the cheetah coming in from Africa, rather than translocating your own lion from Gir to Madhya Pradesh. How do you respond to that? That this is a multi-million-dollar exercise when something far cheaper and more effective could have happened.
All right. All right, I'll come to that. But just give me few seconds to go back to the cheetah.
Yes.
The cheetahs have been recorded in Indian history and prehistory for last 2000 years, all right? Firoz Shah Tughlaq had so many cheetahs in Caracal in his menagerie that it was difficult to count. Emperor Akbar had 1,000 cheetahs at one time, and 9,000 cheetahs he collected in his reign of 49 years. Are you suggesting, or is anyone suggesting, that cheetahs were not indigenous to India? I mean, what are we talking about? Anyway, that said, let me go about the lion business. The government of Gujarat, Shankar Singh Waghela, the then chief minister, in 1993 said that I will not allow a lion, leave alone a lion, but I will not allow even a lion cub to go out of Gujarat. There were no cheetah reintroduction plans there. If the lions haven't gone there, it was not because the cheetahs have come in. Oh, let's be real, for Christ's sake. This is ridiculous. The lions have not gone to Kuno Palpur in spite of a Supreme Court order. And don't tell me it's because the cheetahs have gone there. I mean, these are two separate things. Yes, because your entire Asiatic lion population is in one geographical area, it is prone to all kinds of natural calamities, Stomoxis caltricans, also to canine distemper and God knows what else. So there should be a second home, but this has got nothing to do with the coming of the cheetahs.
But
1993, who was talking about
but Divya Bhanu Singh, you have no issues with the costs involved in such a large project?
No, but look, Rajdeep, if we are going to reintroduce a species which has gone extinct in our country, there is going to be a cost. And that cost is worth it because it will become a mega species, a flagship species, and if its habitat is protected, then your wolf, your caracal, and all other minor carnivores and herbivores of the grasslands will be protected. Just as the Project Tiger now, which has been around for since 1972, has protected an entire environment. And let's face it, Project Tiger took so many years to come about. That was not the reason not to start it. So, okay, fine, give this guy a chance. Let's get on with it. That's 20 years down the line, then we may be all in.
You're saying judge this project not today, judge it 20 years down the line. Mahesh Rangarajan, from your experience of looking at the way conservation, way conservation projects have taken off, Project Tiger extremely successful. Your sense, should we be positive therefore of the cheetah coming home in a way, given the fact, as just was revealed to me by Divya Bhanu Singh, that Emperor Akbar had 1,000 cheetahs with him? Is this something we should see positively, and over the next 20 years, possibly cheetah conservation becoming, like tiger conservation, a badge of honor for India?
No, one thing I do want to emphasize is that the situation in India or any developing country will never be ideal. When Project Tiger underwent a midterm review in the mid-70s, Dr. Lehausen, very senior scholar of cats, said that the tiger reserves ideally should be 3,000 square kilometers with 300 tigers. There's probably only one habitat, the Bandipur Nagarhole complex, which has 500 to 600 tigers. The situation will never be ideal. The other point is, this is a very important project. You use the word transcontinental relocation. Look at the countries, Namibia, South Africa, and India stood by them in the struggle against apartheid. This is a very unusual project. Project Tiger was supported by WWF, large international body. $1 million was raised mostly by European royals and others. This is a project done by 3 developing countries together. Whether it will succeed or fail is a question biologists have to answer, and all these concerns are genuine ones. How does a large carnivore adapt to a new environment? Will it be able to hunt? How will it coexist with other carnivores? But we should remember that cheetahs historically shared range with these very animals, the lion, the leopard, the hyena. Similarly, in the past, in the grassland areas, it would have shared habitat with the wolf. And if we are serious about looking at these habitats, then one should keep in mind that the focus in the 70s was on tigers and forests. Well done. But you know, the shadow of tiger and shadow of forest should lift. We must look at different kinds of environments. Hopefully, this will be a signal to look at deserts, semi-arid landscapes, so the endangered great Indian bustard, very important Jordan's cursor. So, you know, a new view of the land where the living beings are part of the land. Conservation isn't about the animals alone. It's a notion of heritage which includes the animals and birds as part of what India is to be. So it's very ambitious, and there are very serious human challenges. They are very critical ones. I'm not sure all villagers in the larger landscape need to be moved out. Can these animals pan out into larger areas where we try and minimize conflict?
Correct.
So the jury is out on the future, but it's a very, very significant effort that one can say to renature the central Indian ecological landscape.
Well, all I'll say is extremely exciting in a way. For someone who's tracked wildlife purely as an enthusiast, to see this picture, India Today's cover story, the cheetah being garlanded and welcome home, we can only hope that the cheetah will be part of India's landscape in the years ahead, with all the various caveats put in by the likes of Valmik Thapar, the concerns that also need to be registered. But I appreciate top experts joining me on the show today to give our viewers a sense as to why this is an important moment, you believe, in India's wildlife conservation process. Thank you all very much, Mahesh Rangarajan, Divya Bhanu Singh, for also joining me here on the news today.